With Cody Rhodes said to have gone against WWE's plan and more. This is Wrestling Rambles. My name is John and you're watching the Wrestling Report. Before we move on, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Rambles with notifications on and don't forget to like the video. At a film festival in France, The Rock promoted his upcoming movie, The Smashing Machine.
Tablet, I prefer my just tactile with script. And it's all messy over the months and months, but on the cover, I wrote the quote on it, and the quote from Benny is, "Winning is the enemy." And that's really, I think, our anchor to underscore another tab of Smashing Machine. As you talk about the loss, you learn so much in the loss, and this is where winning becomes the enemy, becomes the disease in a way, where these guys become addicted to the win and addicted to success and what happens. So,
yeah, and you, in order to show that, you definitely feel what it's like to succeed. You know, you see the training, you see the hard work, and you feel that joy. And then you also, what the movie is saying is, once you feel that joy, you also know, okay, you gotta be careful, because that joy only lasts this long. You have the rest of your life ahead of you, and how do you deal with it? Yeah. To that.
Noting what Olympic gold medalist amateur wrestler Gable Steveson is doing following his release from WWE, Dave Meltzer said this in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Gable Steveson had a meeting and tryout with the Buffalo Bills on May 15th. He's expected to meet with several NFL teams. I would think his prospects are far greater in MMA than the NFL, since he hasn't even played football at a high level. Steveson never even played high school football. And while Carlton Hasselrig, Brock Lesnar, and Stephen Neal had a lot of NFL interest without ever playing college football because of their wrestling exploits, all three played high school football. Calling for Tiffany Stratton to dress more modestly, former WWE writer Vince Russo said this on the Wrestling Outlaws podcast. "Bro, let's be honest, she wears less clothes out there than anybody on the roster. Way less to the fact that you're watching her matches because something's gonna pop out. Bro, guys ain't gonna boo that." Right there. If she really wanted to get heat, first thing she's gonna do is cover that up. You're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to see this, man. You're gonna have to pay top dollar. That gets her heat. When it comes to the absence of NXT star Eddie Thorpe, who has not been seen since the fall, it was noted that Fightful Select has learned that Eddie Thorpe suffered a freak accident hip injury in his NXT Underground match with Dijak in December and is expected back on NXT TV soon. Talking about the deal made to air NXT programming on the CW. President of the network, Dennis Miller, told Variety, "We knew that Raw and SmackDown were a little bit beyond our budget here. Then if you look, we have a lot of sports where we kind of that next tier moving into the first tier here, whether it's the Xfinity races leading into the Cup or it's NXT leading into Raw and SmackDown, so it just started to fit. Then over the course of a couple of months, we went back and forth and got the deal done." Going over the feud between John Cena and Kevin Federline, who was married to Britney Spears and looking to start a rap career at that time, Bruce Pritchard said this on his Something to Wrestle podcast. "John was the biggest star and was going to get the most play out of it. When you take a look at Kevin Federline, who was in so many headlines and involved in so much controversy outside of our business, the only guy to rub him up against was John Cena. It was a way for fans to get behind Cena because if there was one person who was easier to hate than Cena, it was Kevin Federline. He didn't know a whole lot about Kevin other than he was Britney's husband at the time and very controversial. Who better? I don't know that anybody else on the entire roster matched up. You go with the Michael Hayes philosophy of, do you think Britney would come to see Kevin Federline with John Cena? We could get Britney and I can ask her if she can sing a song. That would be good for pay-per-view. Asked if Michael Hayes pitched the idea to have Britney singing at the event, Pritchard said, yeah, he just assumed she would travel with him and we could get Britney to do something. I wouldn't be surprised because I wasn't in the office. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if that was a pitch as well. We could get Federline and Britney may come and it's in the door to use Britney. Britney was the hottest thing going at the time. Wouldn't shock me if that was the pitch. As the Nature Boy Ric Flair suffered kidney failure and a ruptured intestine in 2017, it appears that WWE was ready to have an episode honoring Flair's life in the event that he passed away, with former WWE executive and current AEW executive producer and senior production executive Mike Manzarek telling Talk is Jericho. There's so many to list. Highlights from my time producing WWE Raw. I would say one of the more nerve-wracking moments I had ever doing Raw, and one that stands out like crazy to me, is the night we all thought Ric Flair was gonna die. So Rick had had a really bad health situation, and I think they basically were ready to give him last rites and everything else in between. So we had 3 versions of the show prepared. We had the version that it was going to be executed as it was written, a version that we would do if Rick, God forbid, passed before the show, and then if he had passed during the show. We were getting updates through the family as the day was progressing, and I remember just being like, holy I felt the enormity of that sort of situation. Being in position where probably one of the most iconic names in the business is 100%, we'd have to change the course of the show, and then all the elements that would kind of domino effect into that. That was a pretty nerve-wracking time. I mean, also because of the relationship that I developed with Rick. It was pretty nerve-wracking, and you know, thank God he pulled through. He's alive and better than ever now, all these years later, but that's definitely one of the shows that just really sticks out in my brain like woof. With Asuka out of action dealing with a knee injury, an update on her health was provided by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. It's the original knee injury in the SmackDown angle where she started limping 2 months ago that she took a little time off but then went right back to working on. And it worsened on the European tour, and she felt she needed to stay to drop the tag titles at Backlash and then take time off. Speaking about the title reign he would like to have, World Heavyweight Champion of WWE, Damian Priest, told the Rob Brown Show, I want to be the type of champion that Seth Rollins was, a workhorse. I want to defend the title. I want to take on everyone and anyone at any point. When it comes to the roster, I want a piece of everybody. I want a piece of everybody. It's usually the opposite. Recalling a return to WWE, Nikki Bella said this with Carmella on her podcast. But also, SummerSlam 2016 return was nerve-wracking because they literally did not want them to know I was there till, was it 2 matches before? You remember? And I had to go and take your finisher in the garage at Barclays. They just put a crash pad out by the trucks and they're like, okay, and we had never touched before, so we were like, alright, but you need to take her finish. I'm like, okay, and they're like, okay, now go. And I go, well, shouldn't I do more stuff in the match than just come out and hit a finisher? And they're like, no, you'll be fine. And I'm like, but it's like a massive match. It's SummerSlam in Brooklyn. I remember just sitting on the bus and being like, I just got back from neck surgery. I hadn't even had a practice match. We all know why I got put in that position, which I was so grateful for. When someone failed their test and they called me, they go, hey, can you actually be ready in 6 days? And I was like, sure, no pressure, she joked. On the WWE Twitch account, fans were able to see The Fiend's therapist. Here's a clip from it.
who are these people?
No more to lift these weary.
Asked about a potential dream match against Brock Lesnar, Gunther told Mail Online, "Of course I heard something about it. I always saw Brock as my final boss. I always get portrayed as that, as the NXT UK champion, the Intercontinental champion. I was like the final boss of that division, and Brock for a long time was the final boss of the whole company. So I always saw myself in my future to be in a similar position to him. And to be that, you've got to get in the ring with that guy. We'll see if there's a chance for it to happen again. I'm more than up for it. How the situation is exactly right now, I'm really not that informed about it, to be honest. I think we had that one face-off in the Royal Rumble, the reaction that was there, and that was a confirmation for me." During that same interview, Gunther said this in regards to his transition from NXT UK to the main roster. "I think one of the reasons why I didn't want to go to the US for a long time was because Raw and SmackDown under Vince's vision at that time was something that was never appealing to me as a wrestler. It was just not what I was interested in. I'm a throwback and I like to have my time for my matches, and I like to have to focus on what I do in the ring and not the bells and whistles around it. And that experience back then at Survivor Series 2019 was almost a confirmation of that." Responding to the idea that he hates AEW's Kenny Omega, WWE star Dijak said this on X. "I'll clarify this because I think people misremember. I never hated Kenny. I met him a few times. He super kicked me once in Ring of Honor. He was always nice. One time he on NXT, so I said I out-wrestled him at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. For the record, I've always said he's one of the best in the world." Touching on the injuries that she was suffering from prior to her WWE comeback, Liv Morgan told Chris Van Vliet on Insight, "It was great returning at the 2024 Royal Rumble. I mean, I had a pretty serious injury that we kind of even haven't really disclosed the details of. So basically, I dislocated my shoulder. Yeah, in a match with Rhea Ripley, I dislocated my shoulder and I went and got an MRI. The MRI showed a labral tear. I don't know if you guys know anything about MRIs, but they're only 60% accurate. I did not know that, and so pretty much they're like, hey, we recommend getting surgery because of the dislocation. So you're gonna dislocate it again. Whether it's in 5 years, whether it's WrestleMania next year, you're gonna have another dislocation." And so I sat around with it because I really didn't want to miss time, obviously, but I also didn't want to have this injury again, so I opted for the surgery, but luckily I did because, like I said, MRIs are only 60% accurate, so when my surgeon opened up my little shoulder, he was like, well, bicep tear, rotator cuff tear, labral tear, and so I have all these extra tears and rips in my shoulder that we wouldn't have known about had I not gotten the surgery. So if I chose to just rehab, I wouldn't have healed properly and we wouldn't have known why, and so I got the surgery. I've honestly forgot I've had the surgery. I feel normal. I feel great in the ring. I only remember when I see my suture marks, so it was pretty crazy. It hurt so bad that it didn't even hurt, if that makes sense. The pain was so overwhelming that I couldn't even really process it. Pain-free now, full rotation, full mobility. Work on getting my full strength back. My right is a lot stronger than my left right now, but I'm feeling great. It moves great. Yeah, so I'm happy. I got very, very, very lucky because shoulders are a little bit iffy. I've asked a lot of people, and some people with shoulder surgery, they said like it kind of feels worse than it did before, and I'm very, very, very lucky that mine feels 100% normal. For that same interview, Liv Morgan mentioned the time that she helped CM Punk in WWE. I'm on a Tampa flight heading to Chicago for Monday Night Raw. A couple of us live in Tampa, so there was a couple of us on the flight, and CM Punk's just right in front of me in first class. And I was like, "Hi, I'm Gianna." He was like, "Hi, I'm Phil," and we just introduced ourselves. I think I'd fallen asleep for most of the flight, and I wake up to him kind of scrambling. He had lost his AirPods, and everyone's in boarding, and I'm right behind him, so I'm like, maybe it's in my seat, maybe it's in my bag. So I just stay behind to help him find the AirPods, but he actually found the AirPods. I think they were stuck in his seat. For more information regarding Tiffany Stratton, who was under fire from fans due to a video she posted on her Instagram story where she is seen hitting Jade Cargill and audios playing saying "black bitch," Ringside News wrote that despite the angle becoming a huge controversy, a new report by PW Insider dispels a rumor that Tiffany Stratton's match on WWE Smackdown had been pulled due to the video. According to them, the match is still scheduled and there has been no changes in plans. Moreover, several sources indicated that Tiffany Stratton is not facing any internal trouble and has received unanimous praise from management and other talents since joining the roster. Her status within the company remains unchanged and she continues to be on good footing. Dave Meltzer added in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that fans started going crazy calling it racist and she took it down. Basically, if this was someone who wasn't a star, they'd be fired instantly. Lots of fans sent the video on X to Paul Levesque, so it was a pretty significant situation. Speaking about the segment on SmackDown prior to WrestleMania, where Cody Rhodes gave up his match against Roman Reigns to The Rock, Brian Gewirtz of $7 Productions told the Ring of Wrestling show, "I will say Cody Rhodes is a human being who is genuine and real, and he wears his heart and emotions on his sleeve, and I will say in Alabama, certainly even if you tell me, dude, that will never work, that's stupid to even propose it. But the idea was supposed to be, again, it's like a Nixon-Kennedy debate a little bit where it's like if you read the transcript, you're like, oh, Nixon kicked his ass. If you watch the actual footage, you go, it was a sweaty, terrible mess. Because Cody, it was supposed to be in some form like, yeah, F&A, go get him, Rock. You're gonna get your ass kicked, Roman. Let's do this. And kind of this uplifting promo, and instead he looked like someone shot his dog in the face in the parking lot. Like you said, just look at his expression, and by the way, someone else who even when the team wins, sometimes looks forlorn and upset and despondent, Julius Randle. Hey, so yeah, that I don't think helped matters. It might not have changed, it might not have affected anything, but certainly on paper, and by the way, I don't even blame Cody for that because he's real. He's one of the realest people I've ever met, so yeah, it's like he said what he had to say in the promo, but you couldn't mask what he was really feeling, and I think the fans felt that a lot. I think the fans felt like he doesn't mean a word of this. This is being forced for him to say. He's despondent. He's literally doing the Michael Cera Arrested Development Charlie Brown walk out of the arena when he's supposed to be on cloud 9. So I think that had a lot to do with it and the conversation. Also, Brian Gewirtz revealed what led to The Rock's lengthy social media promos telling the Ring of Wrestling show, I mean, it was an awesome experience because, you know, when The Rock does something, he's not going to do it half-assed and he's going to go all the way with it. And I think it was in Phoenix. The first promo with Rock and Roman Reigns, I wasn't even there. I missed a chunk of TV at one point because of a family emergency thing, but I noticed as I was watching it that they didn't get to half the promo they were supposed to cut. That's the peril of going on last on a live show, and I'm like, did you have to introduce Braun Breaker for 5 minutes in the segment before? Could that not have been saved maybe for next week's show? That's what I was thinking when I was watching it because I knew there's no way they're going to be able to get this promo out. So I communicated with Rock afterward like, what are we going to do? You didn't get to cut half the promo. And he's like, nah, it's cool. I'll just cut it on social media. It'll be fine. And that's kind of how that started, and when he did, it's like, yeah, I'm doing doing this, I'm doing it full scale, and I'm going to say whatever I want. He's reached a point in his life now, which we all hope to get there at some point, which is I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm not going to do what I don't want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. There was certainly like a, oh, what's happening? What are we doing? That we needed to communicate to WWE, but it certainly wasn't like, hey, getting a call from Triple H, who's saying tell Rock to cut out that Instagram stuff because all it does is give massive amounts of views and attention to the angle and the product and everything. It's communication stuff sometimes. When it comes to a huge match for Drew McIntyre coming up, Ringside News wrote that as previously reported, WWE announced that the Clash at the Castle premium live event, which will be taking place on June 15th this year, it will be held in the OVO Hydro in Glasgow, Scotland. The King and Queen of the Ring premium live event is set to showcase the tournament finals, featuring WWE Women's World Champion Becky Lynch against Liv Morgan, WWE Intercontinental Champion Sami Zayn, facing Bronson Reed and Chad Gable, and undisputed WWE Universal Champion Cody Rhodes squaring off against Logan Paul. However, notably absent from the lineup is a title defense from World Heavyweight Champion Damian Priest. Instead, WWE is reserving his next title defense for a showdown against Drew McIntyre. On a recent episode of Raw, Priest announced his intention to grant McIntyre the next title shot once he's medically cleared. According to Dave Meltzer in the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the anticipated clash between McIntyre and Priest is expected to materialize at the Clash at the Castle premium live event. And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all later.